Okay, so welcome back to the Foundations for Literacy sessions. We recently looked at the evidence base behind Foundations for Literacy, and now I'm going to orient you to the materials, and then after that, talk about some ways to implement the curriculum. So before we get started, let's just take a look at the learning objectives. Again, jot them down if you need to, refer to them throughout the session, and hopefully you'll be able to answer these questions at the end of our session. Foundations for Literacy, again, it follows the adventures and the experiences of 4 major characters, 3 school-age children, Pete, Kate, and Sue, and their after-school caregiver, Miss Giggle. Foundations for Literacy is supporting the development of vocabulary and decoding through language-rich experiences. And these experiences focus on the building of alphabetic knowledge and phonological awareness, the reading of decodable words and simple connected text, and knowledge of fundamental story elements and narrative retell. So let's quickly talk about the skills that contribute to literacy. If we look at Scarborough's strands theory, we see that there's a language comprehension artery and a word recognition artery. And within each of those arteries, there are specific skills. And for the language comprehension artery, we're talking about meaning-based skills, so background knowledge, vocabulary knowledge, verbal reasoning. And for the word recognition artery, we're talking about code-based skills. So phonological awareness, decoding, sight word recognition, and you really need to balance and have skills from both of these arteries if you're going to move children towards proficient literacy. And so Foundations for Literacy really takes this into account. So let's talk about literacy skills and how they're grouped into these 2 areas. First, there's code-based, and what code-based skills do is they help you break the code. They help you decode written words. So an example would be learning letter-sound correspondences. For meaning-based skills, these are the skills that are needed to understand at the word and the sentence or phrase and the connected text levels. For example, sequential language or grammar. So let's look at the intervention components in Foundations for Literacy and look at whether or not they're code-based or meaning-based. So we look at phonological awareness in Foundations for Literacy. That would be a code-based skill. We look at alphabetic knowledge. That would also be a code-based skill. We look at vocabulary and instructional language, so that would be a meaning-based skill. And we look at basic story elements and narrative retell, which would also be a meaning-based skill. There are 4 major instructional principles in Foundations for Literacy. These are explicit instruction, repeated opportunities to practice skills, multimodal representations of concepts, and learning that is embedded in fun and engaging activities. Explicit instruction. Tell your students exactly what you want them to do, tell them why you want them to do it, and model the skill. Be intentional in the instructional language and the strategies you choose. Next, repeated opportunities for practice. Practice helps students acquire new skills, but it also helps them to build mastery. So automaticity and fluency are the only way you can build those skills or move towards those skills is through repeated practice. Multimodal representations of concepts. Consider individual learning styles, so we talked about learner profiles earlier, and utilize the student's strengths and support their areas of weakness. Remember, there's no one-size-fits-all strategy. And finally, make sure that learning is embedded in fun and engaging activities. This motivates kids, this keeps their behavior on target, and it really moves them towards learning. So let's take a look at the curriculum material. First, there's a teacher's manual, and the teacher's manual provides information regarding planning and implementation. There are unit plans. These unit plans have lesson plans by unit and a resource appendix. There are instructional materials. All materials associated with the 4 lesson plans in each unit are included in the Foundations for Literacy curriculum. And there is a professional development website currently in progress. We have 29 online professional development modules, and we are currently building an online community of practice. So the teacher's manual includes an overview, which has a scope and sequence, a list of goals and objectives, and planning and instructional strategies. It has what we call how-to pages or instructional pages. So it explains how to do each of the activities within the curriculum, as well as how to implement practice time and storybook time. There are lesson plans for 24 units plus 4 supplemental units. We have progress monitoring that is cumulative across the school year, and we have a list of parent pages. So if you'll look here, here's an example of progress monitoring. Progress monitoring occurs every 9 units, and it is cumulative in nature, and it assesses all of the skills that come within those units. Parent pages. There's one parent page for each unit. The parent pages inform parents about the content of what their children are learning, and it provides guidance for activities that parents can do at home, which really reinforces and extends their children's learning. The parent pages are available in Spanish and English. So the first 4 units of the curriculum are what we call foundational units. And these units expose teachers and children to the materials that will be used throughout the curriculum. These units are used to teach children the daily routines that they will go through each week. And they also teach the instructional language necessary to understand how to do the requested task. For example, we do activities with puzzle pieces so that we learn the language, put together, and take apart, so that when we move into syllable segmentation task, the children understand, let's take this word apart. Let's put this word together, because the instructional language was taught prior to the instructional task. We also provide an opportunity to evaluate children's readiness to continue into the curriculum. So we look at children on both sides of the fence and determine how much visual or kinesthetic support will be necessary to help them establish the letter-sound correspondence. For example, who's going to need visual phonics versus who's going to need finger spelling? So the letter-sound units are units 5 through 24, as well as the supplementary units 25 through 28. And they teach letter-sound correspondences, as well as how to use that letter-sound correspondence to decode words. So here's an example of a unit. Every unit starts out with the first page that has the unit story, as well as the target letter sound and the target keywords. And the keywords are the decodable words that children can read once they've made it through the previous units. Each unit has an at-a-glance page. So this is a weekly overview of each daily lesson, as well as the unit vocabulary, the children's objectives, and suggested books for storybook reading. For every unit, there are 4 lesson plans. The lesson plans are always comprised of 2 pages. The first page is the daily planning page, and the second page is the daily explanation page. So the first page helps you prepare for instruction, and the second page explains how to implement that day's lesson. You also have a page for weekly practice and storybook time. So skills are broken down across a sequence of 4 days, and we let you know which skills you need to practice on which days and which activities can be used to provide practice. Finally, there's unit vocabulary for every unit. There are 3 levels of vocabulary, and all of these levels have vocabulary picture cards. So we have core vocabulary, which is denoted by red text or a red border. We have target vocabulary, which is denoted by black text or a black border. And we have challenge vocabulary, which is denoted by blue text or a blue border. And if you'll look at these vocabulary picture cards, you'll see that each vocabulary picture card has the corresponding border. And you'll see that in the very bottom right-hand corner, there's a small number, and that denotes the unit that that vocabulary card corresponds to. There are also signed video models for every vocabulary word within the entire curriculum. That really wraps up our orientation to the materials in Foundations for Literacy. So we're going to take a break here, and then we're going to come back and actually look at implementation of Foundations for Literacy.